Hello and welcome to the Box Score Network. I'm Austin here with Simon and Ben. What's up, guys?
How we doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good one. It's a mock draft, similar style to the one we did last time when we had Ben and Peyton, but no Peyton. Simon filling in. We wish we could have got Peyton, but he unfortunately wasn't available. But we're just gonna truck on, and it's gonna be a good one. Let's just go ahead and start this off by showing you the draft board. Again, this is just the normal standard draft board. We have not messed with this at all yet. It could get out of hand early, much like it did last time. No promises. You'll have to stay and watch to find out how wacky and wild this gets. Starting off, Tennessee with the first overall pick. Let's just jump right into it. Last time there was a trade, this time the Titans just stick and pick. They go Cam Ward. Consensus for us is 12, but that's not, positional value. When you consider he is the one quarterback in this draft that you're like kind of really okay with grabbing early. I think you just do it anyways. I like this pick. Our highest on him is number 4. We're as low as 21. But he's a vet. As you can see, he's a super senior, which means he's not, a regular fourth year senior, but he got that fifth year, the COVID year. So that's considered a super senior. You'll see a couple of those. And then I believe you'll even see a redshirt super senior, but we'll talk about that when we get to him. Uh, Simon, I'll throw this to you first. What do you think about the pick? Cam Ward to the Titans, pretty much a forgot conclusion at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way this isn't the pick in the draft come Thursday. And I think, like you said, that this Kim Ward is the baseline. I mean, really above baseline, but he meets the minimum threshold for being a first overall pick quarterback to a already quarterback needy team, right? This wouldn't be the quarterback I trade up for. Like if I'm at 10 and I really want a quarterback, so I'm going to spend an extra first round pick next year to get him. But Cam Ward, if I'm already first overall, yeah, I'm going to take him, and I think he meets all the requirements.
Yeah, Ben, anything to add there?
Yeah, just what the general manager said. They said we did our homework throughout the entire process, but it was not hard to figure out that Cam was the guy for us. And listen, maybe, I don't know how early on they figured out that Cam was the guy, but certainly over the past 2, 3 weeks, everybody kind of expected this.
And just general notes, this is a 5-person mock draft. We were all three included and took some of the teams as the general manager, but there were two others who also did some of these drafts and they're mixed up and we got their opinions on and kind of got some reasoning on why. This is not a predictive mock draft per se. It's sort of based off our rankings and what we want, but through the lens of realism, not trying to go out and make these crazy trades like we did on the last one or any of the previous ones. Okay, let's move on to pick 2. And this is going to shock absolutely nobody, I hope. If you're shocked by this, I don't know what to tell you. Travis Hunter goes to the Cleveland Browns, wide receiver slash cornerback. He does it all. He's tied for first in our consensus rankings, but we kind of give him a slight nod over Abdul Carter. But they both technically have the same tied for first in our ranks, or first and second. Not too much to say about this guy. Ben, I'll go to you first this time. Anything on Trav here?
Yeah, the Browns are sky high on Travis Hunter. I'm sure early on in the process they were looking at quarterbacks and looking at Shador, looking at Cam, but I think a lot of people, if they were in this number 2 spot, would come to this conclusion that Travis does so much. He is so good. And if you don't just absolutely slam dunk have to have a quarterback right now, then you really don't want to pass up what projects to be a really high level player. And I think that's where Cleveland kind of ended up at here.
All right, we're just gonna kind of steamroll past to the next one because I think that pick's just not super interesting. This one is slightly more interesting because this is where the Shedeur Sanders pick kind of comes into play. Do the Giants go for the quarterback? We don't think so. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but whoever was the GM of the Giants sure doesn't think so. You can read the blurb about what they said and what they think about Abdul here. But Abdul Carter goes at third. He's a beast. Same, tied with Travis Hunter. Just unfortunately only does it on one side of the ball. That's kind of the slight reason Travis Hunter kind of has that elevated status in this draft class, or really in any draft class. Travis Hunter would have that elevated status, but a really solid pick here. Simon, thoughts on Abdul Carter and potentially Shador being in play here?
Well, first I want to say it's funny because Ben and I could gang up on you here because we're both on Team Abdul as number one overall on our board. You're
You
you're
are.
the you're the lone wolf. No, listen, Abdul Carter is fantastic. Little bit concerned with what the injury standpoint is with that foot. But if you're looking at an edge rusher, that combination he has of explosion, violence, and speed are what I'm looking for from a pass rusher. And I think he's going to truly impact every single play, whether it's in as a pass rusher or as a run defender, because of all of those traits. Um, yeah, the Giants can't be worried when it comes to these true blue chippers. And you're sitting here at three, you can't reach for a quarterback in Sanders. You got a couple stopgap veterans. Go get a real difference maker, so you don't feel like you have to then compound any other issues by paying a guy you don't want to pay in the future. Just go get the stud. Carter's a great pick.
Ben?
No, we're going to have several teams in this draft that are like this, where he doesn't necessarily fit the need, but the player's just too good at this particular spot. We'll see that all through this draft. Probably 4 or 5 different teams that kind of have that dilemma, if you will. It's like they go into the draft with a couple of needs they really would love to hit, but boy, the big board just kind of dictates that this player's too good to move on. So, and the Giants, I don't think are in a position to draft a quarterback right now, at least not in this first round. And I think that's one reason why a few weeks ago they went ahead and tried to kind of solidify that quarterback spot here, and just so that they don't have to pass on Bill Carter.
Yep. Well put. Let's move on to the New England Patriots at pick 4. And it's Will Campbell again. I know Patriots fans are tired of this. I feel like I've said this every time we've drafted him here, but it's just kind of the smart move. It's either Will Campbell or it's T-Mac, Federal McMillan. It's just kind of pick your favorite flavor of ice cream between the two. Uh, they're your two biggest needs. They're two of the better players at this position, or at this point in the draft, I should say. You can see we have a pretty good grade on Will Campbell. Consensus, he is our 7th best prospect. Our high is 4. We're as low as 9. So none of us think he should go outside the top 10 at all. 4 here is a great spot for him. I'm really behind. I'm really getting behind the Will Campbell to the Patriots train because I think that's just kind of where the value is. Ben, would you tend to agree?
Yeah, I would. I'm 50-50 split on Campbell versus T-Mac for the Patriots here, so I'm fine if they go either way. Everybody that I've talked to, listened to across the board the past few weeks thinks it's going to be an offensive pick, and it's either going to be O-line or wide receiver, and it's probably either going to be T-Mac or Campbell. I'm curious to see come the real draft if the Patriots shock us all by doing something different. It's been kind
Patriots
of
would
way,
never.
right? So we'll see. But everybody in the outside of New England seems to think that this is this or T-Mac, and I like this.
Simon, anything to add?
I mean, we're at the beginning of the week here. It's Monday as we're recording this, so we're getting a lot of information. A lot of rumors are really starting to swirl. So to Ben's point, there's starting to be some buzz about these edge rushers popping up right now. But I think this is the right move. I wouldn't be surprised if that was just a smokescreen. See if the Patriots could maybe trade down to 6 or 7 if someone really wants Mason Graham or Jalen Walker, something like that, so they can get Will Campbell a couple picks later, maybe pick something else up. But this is the pick they just have to make. You called it, Austin, 2 different flavors of ice cream. I think this is like your ice cream versus getting your vegetables in. Like they
Yeah.
need to just eat some broccoli real quick. This is what say to my 2-year-old daughter. You got to put some broccoli in your belly first, and then you can get ice cream after. That's what the Patriots need to do. Go get your left tackle now, and then at what is it, pick 37, 33, 34, whatever it is in the second round, get a wide receiver then.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea here, I think, as well. All right, let's move on to the next pick in the draft, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they go Mason Graham. We're not reinventing the wheel at this point in the draft. The first 5 picks have been what I'd say 80% of mocks are that are coming out at this time. It gets off the rails, I promise. But again, just sort of taking the known road, the road more traveled. Mason Graham, we love him. Consensus number 5, as high as 3 on some of our rankings, believe it or not. Is that one of y'all? Either one of y'all, or either y'all have him at 3?
Yeah, I have him at 3. I have him at 3. I think Graham is like I think in scouting. it's blue chip is like your elite guys, and then red star is what a lot of teams use for like this guy is just under, like he might not have the talent or be at that premium position like those other guys, but this is the guy I'm like banging the table for. Like this is a guy you need on. He's right below Carter and Hunter for me in terms of he's at a position that's on the rise, getting closer to being considered a premium position as a pass rushing defensive tackle. And I think Graham like maxes out what you're looking for there. Sure, you'd like him to have like little longer arms, be a little bit bigger, but you put on the tape and the guy is doing exactly what you need him to do at that spot. I love Mason Graham. I think this would be a home run for the Jags. He would also just open up everything for the rest of that defense, right? They've never gotten a consistent second corner. They've had interchangeable safeties over and over again. Trayvon Walker, they're trying to continue to develop. Putting Graham in the middle there makes the job easier on the edge rushers. Pass rush it makes everything easier for the defensive backs. I think this would be a great pick for Jacksonville.
Ben, anything to add on this?
It's hard not to like Mason Graham. I am curious, though, as we enter a new era for Jacksonville, find out with this pick, do they slide over and catch some offense, or will it just be, hey, this guy's great, we're not passing up on him, which, by the way, is the trend of the first several picks here, is this guy's just too good, next guy up, But Mason Graham's too good to, really let go very far, and Jacksonville didn't do it here.
All right, let's move on to the Raiders at pick 6. Last time we had not Ashton Jeanty, we had Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, but this time the Raiders decided to go Ashton Jeanty. I feel like at this point, you've got about like a third of the mocks have Jeanty, about a quarter have Will Johnson, and then the rest are just a whole mix of like 5 or 6 different players. But I feel like the majority are going the Ashton Jeanty route. I mean, who can blame you? He's just an absolute beast. He's our consensus number 3. The lowest he is on any of our boards is 5. So, and that's a running back. So it's just ridiculous stuff from Ashton Jeanty. I think he's going to be a home run pick wherever he ends up. This is a team that desperately needs a running back. I really like the fit. Ben, your thoughts on this pick? Do you like Ashton Jeanty going here, or do you prefer one of those other kind of guys?
I love him. I love him here. The general manager for the Raiders said, "We're excited. How could you not love this guy? Our running game struggled last year. He's going to help fix that." So in a nutshell, that is true. They really struggled to run the football last year. Is Jonte going to fix all of that? No, but boy, he's going to be a big injunction to that, along with everything else they're bringing in new here. So I like him here. If the Raiders were to go a different direction here, I'd be totally fine with it. The great difficulty is for all of us mockers, right? The mock drafters is, where does Jonte go? Because we're not inside the building to see who's in love with Jonte, right? So he's going to go somewhere, we think, in kind of like this 6 to 10, 11 range. Somebody's going to be so in love with him that they're just not going to pass him up. The Raiders are probably the first team who kind of are in that line, but I love him here.
Simon, anything to add? I know you're anti running backs early. We all know this about you, but is Jeanty an exception to that rule for you, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy that had him at 5, but I still have him at 5, which is the thing. He's totally from the talent perspective, totally worth a top 10 pick. The right team and the right fit's just going to be about what you have around him. Can he actually succeed? Can he actually thrive? You have, I'd say, 3/5 of an offensive line solidified with a couple guys in the mix for those last 2 spots that you can get by with for a year. And then with a quarterback like Geno, you're going to have a viable passing game. So I think all those makes it just solid enough that you can plug Jeanty in and take advantage of that first year. Um, but yeah, I think top needs to go top 10. 12 is probably the floor. I have seen, I think there's starting to be some buzz about Jacksonville at 5, but that also might just be a smokescreen, but I think he could definitely be here.
Alrighty, let's go to the New York Jets at pick 7. I feel like this is the farthest we've seen Teterola McMillan go, but Armand Membu slides in here at 7 to the Jets. I love this pick. This is a need for them, specifically at right tackle, and I think personally Membu is the best right tackle in this class. He's not my favorite left tackle, but for some reason he looks so like he just projects so well to that right side for me. So yeah, I love this pick. Consensus number 8. He's as high as 6 and as low as 11, so pretty consistent across our boards. The range of 6 to 11 is very consistent. You will see some gaps that absolutely destroy that and blow that gap out of the water later on in this class. Between 6 and 11, that's a very thin gap in our consensus, our high-low rankings, rather. But yeah, I'm in love with this. You can see the GM quote. This guy is fast, he's strong, he's flexible, he can play, like I said, the right tackle, he could play guard, he could play on the left side. There's just not too much to knock on Membo, and I think that's why he's getting all this top 10 hype right now.
Yeah, and think about head coach Aaron Glenn, right? Coming from Detroit, where he saw Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell as the two, bookends to that offensive line. Jets are going to try to do that with Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu with this draft pick here. Probably would have liked if Mason Graham had fallen to him or something along those lines, and we'll see what happens. But I think Membu as a finishing piece to this line with Fashanu and then good pieces on the interior would be a home run pick.
Ben, anything to add?
Yeah, the only concern here is, and again, every pick you're going to have something that you could question. I love the Jets grabbing him, and I love him being in the top 10. No problems there. But when you look at the new OC, Tanner Egstrom, he's going to tend to run not necessarily kind of the crazy trapping multi-directional running game that say the Jacksonville Jaguars are planning to do. It's going to be a little bit more of the play action, straightforward, two tight end type stuff. And I do wonder if they're going to be able to get the most out of Membo. Not that Membo's not going to be good here. I have no doubt that he will be good here. But a part of me is like, man, if Jacksonville had him, I have no doubt that they would just max out all of that athleticism. It does feel like maybe he's going to be planted a little bit more, but still he's so good. I have no problem with this at all. He's fantastic.
All right, up next are the Panthers on the clock at 8. Tyler Warren's becoming a pretty popular pick to them. Basically gearing up the offense for Bryce Young, saying, we saw you sort of break out at the end of last year. If you can't continue that with Tyler Warren, we're sorry, but we're gonna have to move on. And that's kind of what we're seeing here on the mocks, all the ones that pick, a guy like Tyler Warren or any of those other offensive weapons to go here rather than, addressing the defense. And I think you can see in the GM says portion over there, they say, the GM, the defense is an area of need. We know that, but I mean, this guy is a beast. You can tell by our rankings. He's a top 10 player, as low as 12, as high as 9. So we love him. I think this is a fine pick. There's nothing wrong with Tyler Warren here at all. Simon, I'll go to you first here.
Yeah, we're gonna learn the motivations of this Panthers leadership in this draft, I think, in this first round pick. Is this about we're trying to make Bryce Young work and we're gonna find out by hell or high water if he's gonna work or not? Or is this we're just trying to build the best team? Now listen, we like Warren, and I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people see him as a top 10 pick and won't blink an eye. But if you were really going to try and build out this franchise, you would probably go edge rusher here, right? Instead of tight end. So when this first pick comes through, we're going to see maybe not necessarily how they feel about Bryce Young. Maybe they could go edge rusher and still think highly of Young or still think there's a future there. But we're going to see what their number one goal is for this season based on what they do at 8.
Ben?
Yeah, and again, this is interesting conversation. Early on in a lot of the mocks that I did for Carolina, it was defense, defense, defense. That was all I was thinking about. But I have really come over. There's 2 or 3 teams in this draft this year who have so many holes. You're like, darn it, why don't I just go get the player I'm in love with and maybe strengthen something that I'm either really concerned about or I know I can make stronger. And so I really have moved over here to the offensive side for the Panthers, whether it would be a T-Mac dropping that they wanted to grab or whether it's a Tyler Warren. But I love Tyler Warren, man. You turn on the tape, he runs over people, he catches the ball well. He's fast. I just absolutely love him here. So bringing him in for Bryce Young to hopefully get whatever power boost we're going to get out of him there, I'm totally satisfied with it.
If Young doesn't work out, let Tyler Warren play quarterback a couple plays a game. We'll see what happens.
There we go. That's the key right there. Now moving on to a team that likes to have random guys come in and play quarterback all the time. They would love. I mean, Tyler Warren would be
Right up
crazy.
their alley.
But no, they get Jalen Walker instead, and I don't think they're mad about it at all. He is listed as a DE slash linebacker. You can project him to, sort of move down to the defensive front, come off the edge, just go get after the quarterback, or you can project him as an off-ball linebacker. Um, we have different opinions on him within box score. I won't get into that right now. I'm sure we've talked about it plenty. I think Timon and I just talked about it a little
I was
bit
about to
yesterday.
say, go check out the other video that went up just last night.
Yeah, and you can see the GM of the Saints clearly, saying we need another edge. We got one. So I think the Saints are here thinking edge rusher. Ben, do you have any sort of inside scoop on that at all?
If I were picking for me, if I were the guy in charge of the Saints, I would have gone a different direction. But we've seen mock after mock after mock for weeks now, a lot of which have the Saints grabbing an edge rusher of some kind, and in some cases it's Jalen. And that's fine. They do need one. There's no question. They need somebody to go after the quarterback, and he looks like he's going to be a very good football player. So I don't mind that. Ultimately, if it were me, I'd be looking kind of a little bit longer term here for the Saints, start to, go in a little bit different directions, a little bit different impact. But there's no doubt this does fill a need, and he's a heck of a player. So totally happy with it.
Simon, for you, Sanders is on the board. He wasn't taken. A lot of people are projecting Sanders to go here. What would your thoughts be on them going Sanders here over a guy like Walker or whoever, whatever edge rusher, say they go edge rusher, no matter who it is,
Yeah,
Sanders.
based on the board here, I mean, I wouldn't kill them for it. I could see the reason why, but I would just think coming into a brand new regime, you quarterback two at 9 overall, like it just doesn't feel like that with this roster, the way it's about to age and cap out. Seems like you just need to continue to kind of get pieces that you could just build around slowly, not drop a quarterback in and see what happens. So I wouldn't blast them for it, but it wouldn't be the move I would make.
Noted. All right, rounding out the top 10, the Bears on the clock, and they go offensive line, which they addressed heavily in free agency. But I mean, protecting your quarterback is never a bad thing, especially when you got a young guy like Caleb Williams who is drafted first overall and is supposed to be this next level future Hall of Fame guy in your backfield playing quarterback for you. You want him protected, so I cannot blame the Bears at all here for going Kelvin Banks, who you can tell we have pretty high grades on, 14 to 20. So not, clearly a step down from like the Membu and Will Campbell who went earlier, but we clearly still kind of all like him. Simon, I'll go to you. Your thoughts on this pick here and really why they might address tackle.
Yeah, well, you're wondering about Braxton Jones at left tackle long term. He was a fifth round pick, I want to say, and he's been fine. He's been at the line, but we just saw Dan Moore from the Steelers, an at the line mid round left tackle get a huge bag this offseason. And that's a question they'll be facing with Braxton Jones here, I think, in just another year. So long term, right? Do you want to pay Braxton Jones 20 plus million a year to just be at the line? Probably not. But also this year, you could maybe improve that spot immediately. And let's say you do end up paying Braxton Jones. Let's say he does play well, whatever. Joe Tooney's not going to be around forever at left guard. And I think Banks can play left guard. Jonah Jackson, who they signed at right guard, he's had injury issues the last couple of years. So I think Banks could even maybe fill in there if it's late enough in the season and he really gets to work out on that right side. But I just think Banks is a guy that I think can play tackle. He's got the length and the athleticism. I think the way he plays projects well to guard, though. So a versatile, I think pretty high ceiling, pretty high floor offensive lineman for this team that is solidified for the moment, but has some questions long term. And you said for your quarterback, you can't mess around. So go get this guy now. And they've got lots of day two picks and future picks, so they can work on the rest of the roster later.
Ben, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the Bears are worth having a conversation over because I do like this pick, and I will come back to it. But for instance, I'm sure some Bears fans are like, "Man, T Mac's sitting right there," and I know we got Odunze last year, but boy, T Mac's really good too. Opting out of him, you got Will Johnson sitting there. I know the secondary is good, don't really need him, and that's probably why they're passing on him. But again, Will Johnson continues another slot down here. And then I'm sure a lot of fans were just wanting an edge rusher, period, right? That may be the biggest need, if you want to say it that way, for the Bears. Not that they have to have an edge, but boy, you would like to. But the Bears are in an interesting spot with this because some of the edges that are sitting here, I don't know that there's standout guys that necessarily need to go top 10, right? So maybe they're at 15, 18, and I'm not sure the Bears felt like they could maybe grab one of those, and maybe the trade back option wasn't available. So ultimately, I like that they got Kelvin Banks from an overall talent standpoint. Let's even not worry about what position he plays for a second. The Bears continue to fix a position here that was ignored for several off seasons, largely. They're going to really fix this. And Simon mentioned that you got the long-term aspect. What they did during this offseason on the offensive line is good for now, but I don't know how long it's going to last. So bringing Banks in as that next wave of, hey, this is really the guy who's going to carry us on for the next 5 to 10 years. I ended up really liking that the Bears continue to hit offensive line, although there's several things they could have done here.
All right. Let's move on here to pick 11 and the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sure they're a little bummed about Banks going ahead, but oh, your consolation prize is only Will Johnson. Boo-hoo. He's our consensus number 6, y'all. We are big Will Johnson fans. You can see he's high as 13 on one of our boards. The lowest you find him is 13. So just in general, we're big Will Johnson fans. Yeah, this is a great value pick. I just don't really know what else to say besides like corner's sort of an area of need. You lost a corner, you get one to replace him immediately. Simon, anything to add?
No, just I love Will Johnson. I think particularly the cornerback position, we're hearing a lot of guys that are kind of being profiled as like, watch the 2023 tape, right? They had a better year 2 years ago than last year. And that's particularly like that with corner because that's just the nature of the cornerback position. Like, oops, you bite on a couple double moves 3 more times than you did the year before, and now you're, outside the top 10 when you were a top 5 guy when you did it just a couple times less. So, yeah, I think Will Johnson's a great player. They just need good players at this point of the roster, but they could certainly use an outside corner. So I think this is a perfect match for San Francisco.
Yeah, and it's a lot of injuries as well in this season for Will
And like the
Johnson.
top speed, like the 40 time and all there's a lot of little stuff, but just good player.
Yeah, Ben.
Yeah, and I would love to see the 49ers pair this in the second round with with a defensive tackle because there's some really good ones sitting right here, but you can't take them when Will Johnson's sitting right there. Right? We just like him too much. So, they got more work to do, obviously, on defense, a lot of work, but this is a great start. I'm sure they're thrilled that he was actually sitting there at 11.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, let's move on to the next pick. And this one was about as easy as it comes. The Cowboys need a wide receiver too, and Tedero McMillan slides. A lot of people are projecting this. This is our first time in one of our mocks he's made it this far, past the top 10. Usually he goes pretty early, or maybe makes it to like pick 9, and then gets scooped up. But no, he made it all the way to 12 here for the Cowboys, and they are ecstatic. We love T-Mac. 5 and 6 on all of our boards, one of the two. You can see the GM just raving about the pick here and how he pairs in this offense and how that combo is just going to be nasty. And it doesn't really matter what the situation is around the rest of the weapons when you've got two pillars at receiver who can really do it all. They both very much have well-rounded skill sets. So they pair well. This is a great. Ben, I'll throw it to you just quickly. Any quick thoughts on this?
I love T Mac. I love him enough to draft him in the top 5, but I have no problem with teams passing on him for any reason that they feel like. And I won't go into why I love T Mac tonight. But sitting right here for the Cowboys, you've already mentioned it. Getting to pair him with CeeDee Lamb, you don't too often get to do things like that in the NFL, where you get to take a really great player and pair him with another player who projects really high. You just don't always get to do that. So for the Cowboys to get to do that, and listen, they've got other needs. We get it. But, they needed a wide receiver as well. So, and T-Mac's sitting right here. How could you not?
Yeah, and talk about pairing a player up with this next pick with the Dolphins up. You're pairing, Jalen Ramsey if he doesn't get traded, which I know those are rumors about him getting traded, but pairing up Jahdae Barron here at 13 to the Dolphins. This is also a pretty sneaky good pick because Barron has played all over the secondary when he was at Texas. You can see he's a senior, so he's got a lot of experience. We think pretty highly of him. Going at 13, he's our consensus 15th player on the board, so we're right there in line with it. Simon, I'll go to you first this time. Jahdae Barron to the Dolphins. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so actually, I don't like this pick that much for Miami. I think Miami needs a real foundational piece for whatever is about to happen for them because we've seen some ugly exits, we've seen some ugly end of seasons for the last few years for them. And I think there's a play style component of that. I think there's an overall talent component, health component of that, but also just who are the foundational pieces on this roster. You mentioned Jalen Ramsey. He could be on his way out. They'd bring in Tyreek Hill, on and again, off again relationship just the last few months with him. They trade big for Bradley Chubb. He can't stay healthy, or he's not been as effective as he was when he was in Denver as he gets older. So the veterans they've invested in haven't panned out. Teron Armstead retires. And then the guys that they've drafted for the last, I mean, really 10 years, you don't have a lot of guys that have gotten real second contracts on this team that are really making an impact on them any longer. I mean, the Tua and Austin Jackson draft was really the last time that a guy's gotten a second contract, and um, those guys aren't playing all that great, or at least all that consistently in a way you can really count on. And for me and Barron, I like Barron. But I see him as a slot corner. I see him as a slot corner only, and that's not the same derogatory statement that it maybe was a couple of years ago because a nickel is on the field at least 70% of the time. But your impact on what you're doing on a down in and down out basis, how much you're going to pay that guy when the contract comes up, and what the divide is between the top of market guys at that position versus what you have to pay a rookie because they're only he's gonna be a top what 8 paid nickel corner in the league right off the bat as a rookie. So I think this team has a lot of holes right now and long term. So I would have rather have gotten a real foundational piece, someone in the trenches, maybe a consistent pass catcher that is going to be around for a while as a bigger person that can really complement what you already have on the team. But I think and people see Barron as an outside corner in the NFL, but I'm worried about him just kind of being, hey, a good slot corner for a few years that you'll have to pay pretty soon.
So Ben, we've heard the negative. Do you maybe have the positive end of this?
I do, but I would have done something different as well, but for a different set of reasons. It is interesting here. Let me hit the positive first. Okay, I love Barron. Okay, I really do. I'm fine with him being drafted this high, totally, and I'm fine with the Dolphins loving him enough to draft him. They need somebody like him to plug in somewhere in the secondary, right? So all of that I love. Check, check, check. You got the need, the talent, the height. I'm cool with all of that. My big concern here is whether Jalen stays or not, but especially if Jalen Ramsey goes, goodness gracious, you're dropping Jahdae Barron into a desert of a secondary. I mean, goodness gracious, he's going to be, flexibility is his big thing. One of his big things. He's going to need to be flexible because he's been playing all over this darn defense, trying to fix a whole bunch of leaky holes all by his rookie self. That part I don't like. And for that reason, I probably would have gone to a different place, O line or D line, where you take a rookie and pair him with somebody who's already a bit of a strength and a veteran. And I'm a little concerned, even if Jalen's here for one more season, maybe Jalen's injured, but maybe Jalen leaves. It does feel like John is getting thrown out here to the Sharks all by himself. It's kind of what it feels like, whether he's slot, outside corner, safety, whatever. But, probably the slot CB. I do like him, though. I want to be clear. And for Miami fans, you're going to like this player, too.
All right, moving on to pick 14. We've got the Colts on the board, and Colson Loveland's available, so they draft him. This is very much what we see all the time in mock drafts. We've had this several times ourselves, and I know none of us are opposed to it at all. Not too much to add here. Just a real big threat who can play inline tight end. You can move him out and kind of put him in the slot as a big slot. He does that really well. His blocking technique isn't the great. that great, but he clearly has motor. Anything to add, Ben? I'll start with you first.
The only thing I will say is if people inside the Colts office, if there's some part of them that aren't dead set on Loveland, you do have the option come real draft time of tight ends in the second round that should be available. And so if there's people in the room that really want to go in a different position here, because there are some talented players still sitting here, that would work out as well. But there's no reason to not like Loveland to the Colts because he feels a need for them. And listen, Anthony Richardson needs somebody like that to work with, in addition to the other, solid options that they've got. So I like it just fine.
Yeah, you've heard it. It's a tale as old as time. A tight end is a rookie quarterback's best friend. And Anthony Richardson, we know, is not a rookie, but he's definitely a developing quarterback. So I think that holds up. Simon, anything to add?
Yeah, just, I wouldn't expect Loveland to come in and be a Pro Bowl tight end right away, but he's going to be another complementary piece to that room that has, in terms of the pass catchers, you got a lot of different styles. So just adding another layer to that is huge for an offense. So I do like that pick.
Yeah, I mean their pass catching room, if they add when they add Loveland in is pretty dynamic. Um, yeah, definitely like what that room looks like with him added. Let's move on to pick 15, where we have the Atlanta Falcons on the clock. And that's not the Atlanta Falcons, folks. We have our first trade of this draft.
Wow.
The Bills shoot way up the board, jump from, I believe, pick 30 all the way up to 15 and go get their guy. You can read what the GM of the Bills has to say about this pick, but man, we can tell we as a group love him. Consensus number 9 player. The lowest you'll find him on any of our boards is 11th. So we're really big Malachi Starks fans. I don't necessarily know if I love moving all the way up here to get him, but I love the pick and the fit. I wish, ideally they could wait maybe a little bit longer because you do see Malachi fall in drafts all the time, but they clearly, by the GM's notes, were like, hey, he's fallen far enough. We don't want to take any more risks. This is our guy. Simon, I'll go to you first here. Just thoughts on the process and the pick.
Yeah, so by trade charts, this trade for Buffalo would probably cost them 56 and 132. Now they have 2 second round picks. They don't have a third, so there's going to be a big gap. So that was part of the math of trying to figure out, okay, is this something that's going to be necessary? And for Buffalo, the thing that I like this trade for them because the thing they keep running into in the playoffs is whether it's the aging version of their defense or this young version of their defense, it feels like they're missing one or two big plays every postseason from their defense. A big third down stop, a big, first down sack or a big first down, incomplete pass that they need to get over the hump in a playoff game. And, for the Bills in this mock, they see Jahdae Barron go 13. They see Will Johnson go 11. And they're looking at their defensive secondary and they're like, man, we just need a guy that when we have to play the Chiefs or the Ravens in the playoffs is going to make a play back there. And so Malachi Starks is a guy that can definitely do that, whether he's playing free safety or whether he's playing nickel and moving Teron Johnson kind of more to the inside. And I know it's just talking down the nickel for Miami, but look at the foundation of Miami versus Buffalo, what these two teams are like realistically trying to accomplish this season. Malachi Starks is a finishing piece for this defense that's young, developing, and has pieces. Whereas Miami has, like I said, foundational things that need to be built. The Bills can give up a couple extra picks. They've got the high value positions covered. They've got a couple the pass rushing defensive linemen. They've got an outside corner. They've got a quarterback, obviously, wide receivers. Offensive line is set. Go up, get a guy who's going to be a difference maker for the defense, even if it costs you a little bit.
Yeah, he's the cake topper, on top of an already
Yes.
well
hmm
well built cake that's finished. He's just kind of the topper on it. Ben, your thoughts?
Simon and I have this oddball relationship where we can often agree on something but have totally different reasons for why we see it that way. And this is another one of those examples. I love this for Buffalo. I love that Buffalo is doing this, but for me, it's more of an overall talent kind of a perspective. I've told top teams for years that there is really no harm in trading from 32, 31, 30 way up in the draft to get a talented player that you usually don't ever get a shot at anymore because you're so consistently drafting so low,
Exactly. Hmm.
especially for a team like Buffalo, who, like you both have already mentioned, man, they've got most of their positions filled. If they're not needs, they're not necessarily old anywhere because they kind of rinsed all that off last season. Why not go up and get, I'm not telling them to do that every season because then you don't have the depth and you are taking too many risks. But once every 3 to 4 years, makes a lot of sense to me to take that risk and go up and get a guy that you're in love with that you will have no shot at sitting back there. So I love it for Buffalo. I think it's fantastic. Y'all put it into great words, but I totally agree.
All right. Let's move on to pick 16 with the Arizona Cardinals. And they go Mike Green here. Consensus are 21 on the board. This is when the gap, 15 to 45. And the person who has that 45 is in the room with us. They're welcome to talk about that if they'd like or not. But, this is a guy who, if you're purely looking at on the field stuff, dominates. But then you have to factor in the level of competition he's been playing against at Marshall, and then you have to factor in sort of the personality or the character clause deal because he does have some allegations that he claims to not be true. And all these teams are doing their due diligence. The Cardinals clearly here, have done their due diligence and thought, we think he checks out, and this dude's awesome. We're gonna go get him. And edge is definitely a need for them, even though they did adjust it a little bit in free agency. It was really bad. So adding two just potentially dominant edge rushers to this Cardinals defense is really going to shake up how that whole defense plays. Ben, I'll go to you first here.
Well, I love Mike Green on the field here. I really do. By the way, Arizona was really looking to trade out of this pick. I mean, boy, were they looking to trade out of this pick. Actually made a different pick than did in our other mock draft. I like Mike Green. I really do. On the field, I really, really like the tape that I saw, and I on the field, I would love to draft him this high. Boy, I've got to talk to everybody on my front office staff though, and do our homework and see where we're at on the off field stuff because it's ugly. So we need to get a feel for that. But we've had other players come through the draft with ugly stuff and have long NFL careers. So it's not necessarily a slam dunk that you just kick him out. Um, what what I wanted to get to though was the small school thing because we see this with Savon Rebel out of East Carolina. We see it with Zabel coming out of what is it, North Dakota State. Yeah,
Yes.
North Dakota State. You always have to try to figure that out, right? Because we try to do that little sample thing at the Senior Bowl and whatnot, and you see if do they fit. But still, game after game after game, when you're playing small schools versus now you're all the way up to the NFL, it's a question you have to ask yourself. I feel good about him up here, even if he only ever is an edge rush specialist. I do feel like he's that quick around the edge, but I like it for Arizona.
Simon.
Yeah, I'm the guy that's got Green at 45 here, and I'll just touch on the small school thing 'cause that is my main concern, and it's not just I watch the tape of the small school games and I'm like, yeah, you can't do that again in the NFL. I watched the Ohio State game from this year, and it just like like it does not stand out the same way it does against the small school team. Like you watch the game, and he comes out of that game with two total tackles, one sack. The one sack is a coverage sack. Will Howard had the ball for like 5 seconds on the play. Uh, the explosiveness, the speed, the power, like it's toned down a little bit. It's not bad. It's not that it's like, oh, he should be a day three guy, he's unplayable. But it's not what we think of when we watch some of the MAC games or we see the Senior Bowl week. Which I know some would argue like you're playing high competition then, but everyone's, it's kind of practice and you're playing guys out of position. So, yeah, I'm gonna let the 45 for me. If someone were to actually look at my rankings, that's kind of just my spot. The 40s is kind of my like, I'm just gonna let someone else do this. This guy's gonna be a top 40 pick, maybe probably even round one in a lot of cases, and I'm just gonna let someone else do it, and that's just where I kind of stick them, because I see what people like. I see power and I see explosiveness and I see some pass rush moves. But then I turn on Ohio State, and all of that's just tapered down. And I just don't know I'm not going to bet my first round pick on that even higher jump of working out the way I needed to draft a guy in the first round.
You just have to be willing to be wrong sometimes, and that goes both ways.
Hmm.
I'm sometimes I'm willing to be wrong and throwing somebody way up high on my draft board that nobody else believes in, and sometimes you're willing to be wrong, just being like, you know what, I'm not going to touch him. He's fine. Someone else can go be right about him if they
Right.
want, but
Yep.
I'm comfortable being wrong. And if that's the way you feel about Mike Green, I think that's a totally reasonable thing. I have everybody has those in every draft class. All right, pick 17, a man I am willing to be wrong about. Jahad Campbell, the high low here, 9 and 38. I have him at 9 on my board. I'm willing to be wrong about Jahad Campbell and the fact that I'm going to go get him. Basically, any mock draft you've seen where when Jahad Campbell gets taken, that's me. That's me. That's I hand up accountability. I take Jahad Campbell everywhere. I know they have two really good linebackers here already, but Jermaine Pratt's old, and this is a new defensive system coming in, and who knows what it's going to look like. But you're just injecting one of the best athletes in this class, someone who has some of the best natural instincts to play football, and someone who he is just listed at linebacker. But, for the sake of reps, you're going to be able to get him in and let him go just rush the quarterback some as well. You're going to let him, go out and get those pass coverage snaps when you want to get, the more stiff guys off the field. So he is very much a rotational player in this first year, and then just a full-on replacement of Pratt next year. And that's if Pratt's even on the team because he requested a trade. It's now looking like he's not going to be traded. But yeah, I know I'm really high on Campbell here. Does anyone want to just absolutely tear me down or come to my defense here?
Yeah, I'll come to the defense here. I've continued to grow on Campbell, not to the extent obviously that you are, Austin. You're a leader in the spectrum in that, but I've continued to warm up to him, and I like him here on the Bengals. Listen, I do think the Bengals could go a number of directions, like Kenneth Grant with defensive tackle. They could even look at Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart at edge, but they just need help on defense. That really is what they need, and Campbell does that. Whether you want to drop him into the edge or whether you want to play him at the off ball linebacker, I think he'll do either one. And like you said, probably for Cincinnati, both in a rotational kind of an atmosphere this year. Because boy, they need somebody to eat up some snaps this year, and I think he's going to get a lot of them early on. Whether or not it's all at one spot, I kind of doubt. I do like Campbell. I think he fits some teams really well. Obviously, you're so high on him, you think he fits every team very well. That's fine. I've got certain teams that I'm like, boy, I would really love to drop Campbell in there. The Buccaneers sitting back there at 19 was a team that I would really kind of drooling over him. Not enough to trade up for necessarily, but I was like, boy, he's getting close there. If he drops, we're going to snap him up. Just really well rounded, stronger than what a lot of people maybe realize when they're thinking about, hey, he's good off the edge. Boy, he's strong against the run. So I like it for Cincinnati, and I would have liked him for a hand, several teams that I think is a great fit for.
Simon, any quick notes?
Yeah, I've got him at 38. Listen, I will say there's improvement in the off-ball play even over just the course of this year. The first game I watched was a Georgia game, I think week 3 or week 4 of the season, and you can see the speed and the athleticism, but it took him a little bit to really get going to see what he was doing. I forget which game I was watching towards the end of the season, but that diagnosis was a little bit quicker. Uh, if you're gonna be a every down off-ball linebacker, though, I want you to take on some blocks, and my man does not take on blocks. That's my bugaboo. But listen, if he can develop into an elite coverage linebacker, I think right away he's going to be a very good just sideline to sideline run and hit guy. If I'm taking a linebacker first round, I want him to mostly do the north south things even more than the east west. So I need him to take on some blocks and blitz over the B gap. But he could probably get better at that. So I don't mind this pick for Cincinnati for sure.
Simon, he said that's what God created defensive tackles for, okay? Is to pick up blocks. It's his job to make plays, okay?
Now, when these defensive tackles now are one gap in their way through, man, there's a guard waiting. There's a Tyler Booker there waiting for a 230-pound linebacker to try to come up there in his face.
I'm so good at this. Or there's a Gray Zabel. Huh?
Mm.
I have him listed as O line. We have him listed as O line. Played tackle in college at North Dakota State. Projects as a guard or center or tackle. He can really do it all. He showed that versatility at the Senior Bowl. He is a redshirt senior, and that age is a knock. I definitely hold guys who have played more football and have that kind of wear and tear. Uh, I hold that against them a tad bit. I do, and I've gone into my reasoning before, but I do like the player. I like the fit. I'm fine with a pick. It's not my favorite pick. I'm happy with it. Do either of y'all, Simon, I'll start with you first. Are you just like in love with this maybe?
Oh yeah, I mean this would be ideal for Seattle, absolutely. 100%. The only way they're getting it done is if Schneider tells himself that Zabel's playing tackle. They're not drafting a guard in the first round, but he says, I'll play him at tackle and then, he'll play guard if he needs to, and that's what's going to happen. Zabel, great fit. I think he's going to be a great guard. Seattle needs it for sure.
Yeah,
Ben?
I love Zabel here. I really do. It would be one of my and maybe my favorite pick that Seattle could make from a personal standpoint because I do like him, and Seattle needs it now. I don't think there's a shooter's chance in hell it's going to happen because between Mike McDonald wanting to build up this defense and between Schneider not wanting to draft interior offensive linemen, which is ultimately where Zabel projects, I don't think it's going to happen. But I love it. I really do.
All right, let's move on to pick 19 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Shamar Stewart, just a freak athlete. He has pretty bad tape, but in the NFL, a lot of times they don't care. Like, we've seen it with plenty of guys in the past. Are like, listen, we see the tools, we will coach you. Maybe you didn't get the best coaching there at Texas A&M. Uh, you can see we have him as highly ranked as 12 in our consensus board, consensus number 17 pick. So right around where he went here at 19. Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Texas A&M for a while there had the best defensive line that money could buy, but a lot of it was undeveloped, kind of under coached, if you will, for a while there. Got a little bit better this past season. Several of the guys even went to other programs. They had so much talent there on that D line. He's one of them. So Tampa Bay really, I mentioned this earlier, ultimately would have loved having Jahad Campbell, kind of a more well-rounded, polished product, I think, that they could do a couple different things with, including dropping the off-ball linebacker, which they were getting killed on the underneath passing stuff last year. But that didn't happen. But part of the reason they were happy sitting here was Shamar Stewart because you do see the traits, you see the pressures, tons and tons of pressure on quarterback. Rarely gets home, so that's a problem. But I do like that they can drop him into this kind of a defense. I don't want him on, a raggedy defense where he's got to be the hero or the defensive savior or even the position group savior. I think that's a terrible idea. But here on Tampa Bay defense, where they've got a pretty good structure, they seem like they know what they want to do. They're just kind of a piece or two away from getting there fully. I like this, even though ultimately there might be another player or two I would rather have had they dropped to us.
Yeah, we're just going to keep trucking right along. We're going to go to Denver at pick 20 here. A lot of people have been, projecting them to go skill position, the 7-on-7 guys. Both tight ends were gone. Omarion Hampton was on the board, but they say, hey, Kenneth Grant should not be on the board here. We have him at 11th. I think we kind of agree that he shouldn't be on the board here. The lowest we have him is 23rd, but we have that wide ranking, semi-wide ranking of 8 to 23, and that's sort of what you're hearing in the community right now. Of this guy could go really early, potentially, most likely won't, but could. And some teams are going to see him really high, and Denver clearly, thinks really highly of him here. Simon, your thoughts on Kenny G to the Broncos?
This is my guy, man. I mean, I'm sure the viewers at this point can figure out this is my style. This is what I'm looking for. But for Denver, I think this is a good fit because hat on a hat, right? Strength on strength. Don't rest on your laurels of having a good defense last year. Defense is volatile. So look at that 3-4 front and say this is a unique year to get a 3-4 player because Grant can play the nose, he can play the end in the 3-4 system, and then when you go in a sub package, he can rush from the interior. So Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, like add to that room, get a young guy in there with those guys, and Grant can keep that defensive line going, which is the forefront of that defense working, and then Pat Surtain doing his thing back there. So keep that defense strong while your offense continues to develop.
All right, trucking along to the Steelers at pick 21. They go Walter Nolan, who is an interesting prospect because he was, a former top recruit out of high school, like literally the top recruit in his class out of high school, and then didn't really do much, and then kind of burst onto the scene very late, and then enters the draft and is like, I don't know, is he like awesome or is he just like gonna kind of revert back? Was that a flash in the pan, or did he kind of like, is it a spark that's gonna catch and last? Uh, Ben, I'll go to you first here on this one.
So listen, if I were in charge of the Steelers, I probably wouldn't draft defensive tackle because I'd be going after some other needs. But for weeks and weeks and weeks now, we have seen and heard, including our very own Simon, that the Steelers have a hardcore shot at going defensive tackle because of age and just because of the middle of the line there. If you were going to put Walter Nolan anywhere, and I think he fits in several spots, including, say, the San Francisco 49ers, this is a great spot because you do have the inconsistency, right? It's, hey, what are we really, truly, game to game, year to year, going to get out of this guy? But boy, they're not going to let him be lackadaisical there in Pittsburgh, and they get to drop him into a whole heck of a bunch of edge rushers that know how to get to the quarterback. And oh, by the way, he's got a pretty veteran defensive tackle there to work with. So if he's going to work anywhere, this is a great spot for him. So I do love it here.
Simon, anything to add for your Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, right position. It's not the best fit. Like he's just on the line of what they look for from that size perspective at that position. He's a one gapper. They typically look for the two gappers there, but in a different world and a different day and age, to get a guy like this with his potential to go into that position of need, it would be really hard to pass up on with a guy like Kenneth Grant off the board already. So I like this pick for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Let's move on then to the Los Angeles Chargers at 22. And Mikael Williams is still on the board. And I think Jim Harbaugh would do cartwheels on the way to the stage if he got to pick Mikael Williams. He just kind of embodies the like Harbaugh attitude, I feel like. Went to Georgia, not a Michigan guy, unfortunately. That's kind of the only knock of maybe the reason I
I'm
wouldn't think
sure
he's
I'm sure Harbaugh
perfect.
tried one time.
I'm
I'm
sure he
sure
tried.
I'm sure he tried and he's gonna try again.
Yeah, but man, this guy has a lot of the traits, pretty much all the traits that you look for, the size, the speed, the arm length. And by all accounts, he is a leader and a student of the game, which are things that Harbaugh also really looks out for. A similar guy like Stewart, where the tape doesn't necessarily tell you a great story, but playing on that stacked Georgia defense, he wasn't, he did what he was asked to do. He filled his role on that defense. We'll see what that role looks like on the Chargers, who, did lose some really juice coming off the edge. So he's probably going to be asked to fill in some big shoes here. Uh, Simon, I'll go to you first. Thoughts on this pick?
Yeah, I love this pick for them. I think he can be. I think it's a good fit as well because in that 4-3 he can kind of be on the end on rundowns, and then you can rush him from the interior if you want to get a little bit more speed, a little more pure speed. You get Tui Tuipulotu on the end and pass down situation, so you can kind of also limit the scale of what you're asking Williams to do in a way, but keep him on the field, let him use his run defense, his size. I think this is great. Williams is not going to be here at 22. He's going to be a really high pick, but he is the one guy that continues to fall in our mocks for some reason. But I think this guy's going to be a top, I don't know, 12, 14 pick. He's awesome.
Yeah, you can see in our range we had him as consensus 16 between 15 and 24. So I feel like he's just that guy who none of us quite love enough. Like I feel like everybody has one guy just
Hmm.
slightly above him and he kind of gets knocked down. But that's because we have four of us. When you have 32 teams, it only
Yeah.
takes one to love somebody to take them super high. And I feel like there's going to be more than just one of the 32
Yep.
that are really in love with Mike Hill and his traits. But let's move on to the Green Bay Packers here at pick 23. And they go Derek Harmon. D tackles continue to fly off the board here. You've been hearing for
Run.
a long time this is a great D tackle class. And I think we're really showing it in this draft class. I don't think we're done with D tackles either, believe it or not. So this is a great pick. This is a guy who really gets after the quarterback as well as anybody from the interior. So, Ben, I'll start with you. Thoughts on Harmon and his fit with the Packers?
Yeah, listen, Harmon's one of the you start to hit a range right somewhere in here where we get into guys that maybe second round picks. Harmon, to me, everything I'm seeing, everything I'm hearing, he looks like a first round pick, and the Packers take him. The Steelers could take him. The Chargers could take him. He gave him taking a couple picks later. He's going to go somewhere in this range, I think. There's too many teams right here who like and need defensive tackle for him to get far out of that 20 to 25 range. Really, I really like the work he puts in. I'm not sure that his ceiling perhaps is as high as some of the defensive tackles that I'm looking at, but I really like him. I like him here. You could also make the argument that he could even go much earlier than this or much later, but I think this is the window for him. So they're going to be really happy that they got him here.
Simon, anything to add?
Also, just going to improve the run defense as well. You said good pass rusher, and he definitely is, but they need some stout run defenders in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, a guy of his size doesn't provide nothing in the run defense scheme. I think he's just more well known, and you think of him as being such a big
Oh,
guy, so fluid
yes.
with his pass rush set he's got. Let's move on to the Vikings at pick 24, and this is one that's traded in almost every mock, but they stick and pick here, and that's because Nick Emmanwori is on the board. And this is another guy, the wide range on him, 18 to 43. But I think anybody who has him low can admit if anybody can get out of Nick Emmanwori what he has potential to be with that athletic skill set, it is the Vikings and Brian Flores and this defense that they run. So I'm pretty happy with this pick as a Vikings fan. I am one of the guys who's a little bit lower on him than most, but I have to admit the fit here does kind of get me a little juiced. Ben, I'll go to you first.
So I love talking about the Vikings here because I do think they could go several directions. If it were me picking for what I would do, I would be hoping that based on needs, a Gray Zabel would drop here and I just plop him into center. Or based on needs, my big hope is that Jahdae Barron slips down to me here and I plug him in as a cover guy, even if it's slot cover, and I use his flexibility. Those would be my ideal things. But neither of those guys are sitting here. So then it came to the fact of, well, since my need spots aren't there, I don't really want to go after the CBs here. I like Maxwell Harrison, I like Savon Revel, I like Trey Amos, but I didn't really want to pull them off here. Was what I was looking at because I'm the one that did this pick actually. So you start to get in this dilemma of, well, it's about the best player, and Omarion Hampton is a guy that I personally would love to plug in here. But doing it realistically, the Vikings aren't drafting running backs hardly at all in any round. I mean, they've got a fifth round running back over the past 4 years, I think is what this current regime has done. And that's about it. They just don't want to do it. So I didn't think they would do it. So more realistically, I thought, well, Emmanwori is kind of the best guy still sitting here at a spot that they could use. And then you have the Flores factor of, well, okay, let's get our crazy on with Emmanwori and with what Metellus over there on the other side. Let's just, I don't know who's going to cover people, but the crazy factor is going to be up real high here.
I love a good crazy factor. Let's move on to the Texans at pick 25. They go grab teammate of CJ Stroud at Ohio State and Emeka Ibuka. He's just like the prototypical number two right now. Or he is going to do his best work out of the slot. He's not a slot only guy. He can also go play out wide when necessary. Whenever you want to get your Tank Dell in the slot when he comes back from injury or whatever sort of alignment you want to do, he can go out, but primarily he's going to do most of his winning from that slot role. He is fantastic route runner, gets wide open, gets yards after the catch. Surprisingly, really good run blocker, which is not something I was super expecting out of him. But yes, sort of has that attitude that I love to see out of receivers, especially guys who play in that slot, tenacious, running over the middle, and tenacious with the ball in their hand as well. So, Simon, your thoughts on this pick?
Yeah, the big question for them is pass catcher or pass protector. And this time around, I love, sending them left tackle. But this time around, I'm just thinking about, wow, CJ Stroud really lit something up when he got a wide receiver that he really liked and had a connection with, right? When he tells the team, go get Tank Dell, that's going to be my guy. And anytime Dell's been healthy, that's been the case. And now with this major injury that Tank Dell has, and we'll see when he's gonna be back. But Stephon Diggs is out the door. Like they haven't quite figured this thing out in the last couple of years. This offense can't move backwards. Stroud has already shown that he could put together an average offense with a bad offensive line. But what we don't want to risk is moving backwards. So let's get him another high chemistry guy he has a really good connection with. Keep that passing offense at least as viable as it's been, and trust in the smaller moves you made on the offensive line this free agency already to get you through this year before you keep investing in the future.
Ben, anything to add quickly?
Yeah, I should have made an inexpensive trade up to 2021 or 22 and got the defensive tackle, but I guess.
Sit down, D'Amico. You're fine. Jesus.
Okay. Everybody hold on to your hats. We got a big one. The Los Angeles Rams are on the board. They made two trades in our last mock draft. They don't make any trades here. They say Shador has fallen far enough. Let's go get our next quarterback. Matthew Stafford's not getting any younger. He's still playing at a pretty high level. Shador is someone who has a great base on him already. What you need to see is sort of him elevate his game to that NFL caliber level. And I think being under someone like Stafford, who really is known for that, elevated play, and maybe was able to, you see it less nowadays with, older quarterbacks kind of coaching up the younger ones. I don't know how Stafford's going to handle this pick, but Shore is at least going to be able to sort of be a fly on the wall and learn all he can from a distance if Stafford's not willing. But I think Stafford might be willing to kind of show him the ropes and help him out all he can. But this is a player who is for the future. This is not a going to fill any immediate needs, which is tough to do in the first round. But it's at pick 26, so it's not like super high in the first round. I can't quite sell myself on this pick fully. If you would just trade down a little bit, even if it's just like 3 or 4 spots and then make the pick, I feel like it feels way better just from a process standpoint. But I can't hate on necessarily the pick. Simon, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, at least for Shador, I think this is ideal
Yeah.
because not only is he going to get to sit, but he's going to get to sit for a good franchise with a good quarterback to watch, with a great head coach to learn from and be around. And then when he does play, he's going to walk into, and we'll see whenever it actually ends up being. But in theory, it's going to be a ready-made offense, right? Maybe some of the pieces are changed out, but McVay's not going to tear this thing all the way down just before Shador becomes the quarterback, right? Shador is a I can execute something that's already here quarterback. You're using the term elevator. He's not the elevator quarterback, right? He's not going to come in and change a franchise and make a wide receiver four, a wide receiver one, or an average offensive line look great. But you give him a good offensive line, pass catchers, and an offense that's already put together from a great head coach. He can execute this offense. He can put together a good scoring unit, efficient unit with his accuracy and his toughness and things of that nature. So this is a great spot for Sanders. Yeah, the Rams need a corner. They've needed a corner for 5 years. They'll find someone and make it work for a little bit at some point. So yeah, I think this is a good pick from both perspectives.
Ben?
Love it for Shador for all the reasons you guys put out there. I've kind of come to the settled realization over the past few weeks. Shador is probably going to drop. I don't think he drops all the way out of the first round because even if the Rams don't take him, I figure somebody trades back up somewhere in the late first to grab him is kind of where I've settled in on that. but it's great for Shador to be here. And it is good for the Rams. It's just a big decision, right? They've got to get everybody inside the building on board with the fact that, hey, we're taking a quarterback here in the first round who would project to be our future whenever, Matt's done. So it is a big decision, but I like it.
All right, pick 27 and the Baltimore Ravens. They go James Pierce Jr., who we've been seeing slide way earlier in the draft process. 2 months ago, we were seeing him go close to top 10 sometimes, but he has fallen a lot. He's sort of the anti-Mykel Williams, and that's why we're kind of seeing them flip spots and drafts where Mykel's rising and James Pierce is falling because Pierce is the guy who produced 17 sacks in his last 2 seasons, and he's playing in the SEC. It's not, Mike Green where he's playing against really low level competition. But the tools aren't necessarily great. He also has this sort of character concern looming over him, maturity levels that are questioned by a lot of people. I don't think he was in our first round mock at all last time. So I think the Ravens are one of those teams that are comfortable taking players who maybe have had some character concerns because they feel strongly in their leadership in that locker room to take over. But James Pierce is someone who you cannot knock what he has done at the collegiate level. You just have to hope he can kind of adapt his game to the NFL. Ben, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, listen, the Ravens have one of the strongest cultures in the NFL, if not the strongest. It's been around for 20, 25 years now. It's been remarkable, really, and he's going to benefit. Pierce is going to benefit from being in this defense. You just drop him in as an edge rusher, and then maybe he develops into a three-down player over time, maybe not. But even if all he ever is that edge rush specialist, he is so darn fast off that edge. The Ravens would benefit from that. He would benefit from that. So it really does complement each other here because the Ravens are going to have a pretty good defense that gets after it no matter what. But if you can drop in that speed thing right there, I like it.
Let's move on to pick 28 with the Lions. They go Donovan Ezaraku, defensive end out of Boston College. This is a guy who, and you can tell by the GM notes here over here, he plays with that Lions, bite your kneecaps off mentality. He is not a big guy at all. He's actually small for his position, but he plays with incredible strength and power and technique, and the physical tools probably limit him in some capacity, but he's not limited by anything else. And I think this is someone who fits really well for this Lions team and what they look for in their players. And at pick 28, you're not going to find a perfect prospect anyways. Like you're not going to, find your, Abdul Carters here. So, it's really nitpicking when you kind of give them those knocks. Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love this pick for them. I mean, this is the guy. If you just want a fun thing, this is the guy that like Euro steps in his pass rush. Like he really uses that different like athletic ability. And yeah, he's not the biggest guy, but he's got good quickness. You look at his like cone and shuttle drills. You look at his arm length, his wingspan. Those things stand out. Good pass rush moves, good hand use already. So a technician with some interesting athletic components. And then, yeah, just the mentality and the personality that I think is going to fit right in here. So maybe he's not that right away, 10 sacks across from Aiden Hutchinson kind of guy, but a guy that can probably be, that will definitely be a useful player right away and maybe continue to develop into a high impact sort of player.
All right, the Commanders up at 29. They go Omarion Hampton. I'm surprised he got this far, frankly. He's as high as 7 on our boards. I wonder who that is. But consensus number 22 on our boards. He is a fantastic running back. He would be a number one in most, or the number one running back in most classes that don't have, a Bijan Robinson or an Ashton Jeanty like this one does. But yeah, this is the team that needs a running back. He is a fantastic zone runner. He has fantastic vision, great explosiveness. He holds on to the ball. He's performed for bad teams. He's performed for good teams when, UNC had Drake May versus when they didn't. And so I really don't think there's any question marks with Hampton coming into the league, which is something that you love, especially at a skill position who's going to touch the ball a lot. You don't really like to have those sort of question marks looming around those types of guys. And I don't have any about Hampton. Uh, Ben, I'll go to you first here.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and let the audience know this is a pick I made. I was looking at three guys when it came to this scenario, right? Josh Connerly was a guy that really appealed to us, even though we've worked on the O line. It still is not set in stone for the next 2 or 3 seasons. Connerly was a guy that we were really, really close to maybe drafting. We like Maxwell Hairston, but just not enough to pull the trigger on him here. But with Hampton, there really was no reason not to take him. We love his production. We love what he can do for this offense. We love that he can take pressure off Daniels. We love that he can go with our kind of newly kind of solidified offensive line. And yeah, we got needs all over the defense, but we can't fix them all in one offseason anyway. So Hampton just made a ton of sense for the Commanders here.
We'll go to the next pick, number 30. This is the Falcons pick. This was originally the Buffalo Bills pick, but this is that trade that happened earlier. So the Falcons are now on the board, and this is the biggest surprise to me in this whole draft. You trade down, and then you take Darius Alexander, who on our consensus boards as low as 62. The highest he is 37. He's our consensus 46 player, and you grab him at pick 30. He's a redshirt super senior, which means his first year in college football was the 2010s, everybody. It was 2019. He redshirted 2019. Then he had the COVID year in 2020, and then he played 4 years of college football. And he did it at Toledo. And I'm just going to let Simon explain this pick because I think he's the only one who can do it justice.
Yeah, man. I mean, turn on the film. Everyone's no, I'm just kidding. But if you
I
watch,
I,
yeah,
I
I know.
originally had him at like pick four, like my 40th overall. He's moved down my boards, unfortunately.
Here's the thing with the Falcons. What do they need more than anything else right now? They need pass rush, right? They need people that are going to get after the quarterback. What have they tried to do for the last, I don't know, 4 years? They've tried to draft pass rushers. Now, granted, not always first round, not always top, 20 pick, whatever it is. But Arnold Ebiketie, D'Angelo Malone, Zach Harrison, Braylon Trice, who was injured last year, obviously Rook Ororo, the defensive tackle last year. They're trying, and something about across two different coaching staffs, right? One GM. I'd have to look at my scouting department in the eyes and say, am I really going to believe whatever pass rusher you tell me at 15 is going to be the one that solves it? This is going to be the guy that, no. So let me move down. Let me get some extra capital. We're short picks anyways. And when I look at Darius Alexander, when I keep watching him, we've said this is a good defensive tackle class, right? We had that run of defensive linemen, interior guys, especially in the 20s. He's closer to them than he is to me, the rest of the defensive tackles, right? If I were to wait for the guy in the second round and I miss out on Alexander, there's a bigger drop off to me in Alexander to those guys. I look at those guys and it's like, okay, that's a nice piece. Okay, oh, that guy's is a run stuffer. Okay, that guy's a one gap guy that can get behind the line of scrimmage, but maybe isn't getting after the quarterback. This guy's a tweener. We don't know if he really fit in the system. Alexander is a guy at 6'4", over 300 pounds, long arms, one gaps into the backfield fast. So at the very least, I'm going to have a big physical athletic presence who does have finishing ability, who does have the ability to track and get to the quarterback even at that size. And in this defense, I can move him around. I can play him at the nose. I can play him at the end. I can play him whatever kind of front we're using. I'm getting that extra capital to do it. So yeah, he's not the sexy, this guy might get 12 sacks a season, but I have a new hole in the interior of my defensive line with Grady Jarrett being out the building. I want to keep adding to that position. And now instead of hoping Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant or Derek Carmen work out, I get Alexander, a guy who's a step down, but I'm also getting